Okay, welcome to Rabbit Hole Roundup, episode 3. We got a lot of stuff to cover today, and it is very late here. Forgive me, I'm pretty tired. And I'm going to try to go relatively quickly because, one, I'm tired, it's late, and two, I think we're going to have a busy, crazy day in the world tomorrow. So, it's Martin Luther King Jr. day today, and I wanted to start off by presenting some evidence that Martin Luther King Jr. might have just been a figurehead presented by the powers that be. I, for one, am not a big holiday person, and I always question why we get the holidays that we get, why they tell us to celebrate the things that they tell us to celebrate, and the people they tell us to celebrate. And this one hurts and hits close to home. The first book I ever read front to back was a deep biography on Martin Luther King Jr. So, not to say he didn't have a lot of good ideas, wasn't a great speaker, but some documents came out in 2017, and I wanted to review some of them, some of the ones that stuck out. They're allegations, I don't think they were really proven to be true, but they do stick out as very distinctly different than the character portrayed in the media. And I'm always very critical on, the characters we get to worship via the media and things like that. So with that being said, let's get into it. Once again, these are allegations, not to say everything we see here is true. And I do appreciate sort of the outlook he gave the world, his ability to be a powerful speaker. And he had some great ideas that potentially, from what this article says, maybe weren't exactly his, but nonetheless, very, very powerful orator. And like I said, close to heart here. And definitely hurts to see that he might not have been as good of a person as we all thought. So some of the accusations that came out of these documents, things like Dr. King was surrounded by advisors with strong links to the Communist Party. His statements were always subject to approval by the alleged communist sympathizers. He was a secret supporter of communism, a quote-unquote wholehearted Marxist. His organization, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, set up a tax dodge to raise funds for his activities. Dr. King took part in drunken sex orgies and coerced young women to participate, and he had love affairs with at least 4 women, including folk singer Joan Baez. I don't know who that is. I'm a little too young for that. But also illegitimate children and things like that. Like I said, these are all allegations, but there are some things that I'm going to point out after this article that are very much not allegations and still make me question, his character on a deeper level and who exactly what he was, and whether or not he was a figurehead pushed by certain individuals. So and it's funny because in retrospect, some of this stuff clicks into place even more so, this year, the past couple years, than it did when these documents first came out in 2017. So something that kind of stuck out to me is like, I'm not sure if that's true. This says King is such a slow thinker. He is usually not prepared to make statements without help from someone. That's hard for me to believe just based on his ability to speak and his ability to captivate people. Like, he's one of the people that stick out in history as like one of the best speakers of all time, in my opinion. So I don't know how you can be a slow thinker and can't make statements on your own when you have that ability to speak, but who knows. Let's keep it going. Quote, several Negro and white prostitutes were brought in from the Miami area. An all-night sex orgy was held with these prostitutes and some of the delegates. The document alleged that Dr. King also engaged in a 2-day drunken sex orgy in Washington in January 1964. When one of the females shied away from engaging in an unnatural act, King and other of the males present discussed how she was to be taught and initiated in this respect. It is fact that King not only regularly indulges in adulterous acts, but enjoys the abnormal by engaging in group sexual orgies. Now, sexual proclivities don't necessarily make you a bad person. To each their own. But it's clear that if these allegations are true, he was at least cheating on his wife, and That doesn't match the picture perfect-esque image we got sold of who Martin Luther King Jr. was. And some of the other stuff that I'm going to point out is even worse in my opinion. Another thing that's not mentioned in this article, this is all like a overview sort of allegations put together by intelligence agencies that were tracking Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And they actually sent him a letter telling him to basically off himself or they would release all this info. So who knows? Maybe this is just allegations they put together to ruin his character. But like I said, it paints a different picture than the Martin Luther King Jr. sold by the media. Again, allegations, but this stuff is not. And this stuff is worse to me, the stuff I'm going to show you now. So his wife was an Order of the Eastern Star Freemason. He was also he was a descendant of Freemasons. I believe his father and his grandfather were. And that is definitely a red flag. That's interesting to say. I mean, like, again, being associated with Freemasonry doesn't make you a bad person. It's arguable. I think they're always involved in the people that associate themselves with Freemasonry always seem to stick out in history, especially around like questionable events. Again, just because he's associated doesn't mean that he's a bad person. I personally, my grandfather was a 32nd degree Mason. I'm not a Freemason. I'll never be a Freemason, but technically, somebody could look back in history and try to point fingers at me just because someone in my family was a Freemason. I personally think that stuff is, it's pretty lame. It's like the lamest way to handle knowledge. And again, it's a red flag. Secret clubs, secret societies, to me, are just red flags. It's like, what do you have to hide? And if you're really all about building proper men of good character that help society, why is the stuff that you do secret? Why are you doing rituals, things like that? It's all very weird. But again, his father, his grandfather, Freemasons, and his wife, Order of the Eastern Star. To me, that's very questionable. Let's keep it going. And this is the biggest red flag to me. This was a speech he gave at the 68th Rabbinical Assembly Convention in March 1968. Now, I'm going to refrain from giving opinions on this one. I'm going to let you just listen to what he has to say and take a step back, look at what he's saying in retrospect from the current day's vantage point of everything that's going on. It might be a little hard to hear because I was listening to it myself and I found the recording hard to hear, but do your best. I have the captions up as well, so let's see if you can catch it.
I think it is necessary to see that what is basic and what is needed in the Middle East is peace. Peace for Israel is one thing. Peace for the Arab side of that world is another thing. Peace for Israel means security. And we must stand with all of our might to protect its right to exist, its territorial integrity, and forever see Israel, and never mind saying it, as one of the great outposts of democracy in the world, and the marvelous example of what can be done, how the desert land almost can be transformed into an oasis of brotherhood and democracy. So that peace for Israel means security, and that security must be a reality. On the other hand, we must see that peace for the Arabs means, in a real sense, of security on another level. Peace for the Arabs means a kind of economic security that they so desperately need. And these nations, as you know, are part of that third world of hunger, of disease, of illiteracy. And I think as long as these conditions exist, there will be tensions, there will be the endless quest to find scapegoats, and so there's a need for a Marshall Plan for the Middle East, where we lift those who are at the bottom of the economic ladder and bring them into the mainstream of economic security. And this is...
I'm gonna pause it there, and we can leave it at that. It's like it's 1968. What business does he have sticking up for that nation? There's also theories and allegations that he was thrown a lot of money by people on that side of the world, and that they might have been the ones writing his speech. I also saw something. I didn't verify this myself, but supposedly JFK warned Dr. Martin Luther King to cut ties with specific people from that side of the world, and he didn't listen. So it's just, again, in retrospect, like from the vantage point of 2026, it's not a good look, right? Yeah, we'll leave it at that. Not really sure how someone sticking up for the civil rights of African Americans in the United States of America has that viewpoint, and why he's publicly making that announcement, but seems like he's fighting the wrong battle.
The world is changing.
We're going to keep it moving. This was a clip that came out a couple days ago. I believe this is the Prime Minister. I don't know his exact position in Canada. He's a politician from Canada. Carney, he talks about the new relationship Canada has with China, and he uses some very choice words that stuck out as being interesting to me. It's almost like a slap in the face of like, you don't want people to believe crazy things. Why do you use the exact verbiage that they point out as being problematic or conspiratorial? So take a listen.
Changed much since that last visit. And I believe the progress that we have made in the partnership sets us up well for the new world order.
Canadian Prime Minister.
Yeah, so the Canadian Prime Minister talking about a new world order. Seems like some very choice words that have stuck out as being conspiratorial for decades now, and that was the exact choice of words he used to describe Canada's revitalized relationship with China, and we'll leave it at that. Again, it's kind of like they don't want people to make these crazy theories, but then they rub it in our faces, kind of. So if you go back and look at my videos, I've made a couple predictions about what might happen with the United States given the astrology looking at America's natal chart, and I've been right about a lot of things, so I just wanted to point them out again. Specifically, I made predictions about tensions with Iran heating up, tensions across the board in every single conflict it was in to start to heat up, America start acting like a general, then also things with Greenland to pop back in and start to get very serious. So I just wanted to point out, as soon as the moon entered Capricorn, the moon represents the citizens of a country in a country's chart. And as soon as the moon entered Capricorn, right here down in the bottom left, that happened, I believe, the 17th. It happened, I believe, early morning the 17th. And later that evening, we got word that Trump was set to deploy troops to Minnesota, given the happening. And again, so Trump in America acting like a general, kind of bringing the fight in a way that finishes and gets them everything they're fighting for. And the situation with the people of Minnesota, they decided to ready up troops and send them down there. So again, that just fits the theme of everything I said. As soon as the moon, which represents the citizens, entered this sort of Capricorn stellium party going on down here, we see that the conflict starts to get focused on the actual citizens of America. So I called that out, and then also called news with Greenland heating up, where I basically said Trump was gonna pump up the heat on Greenland to ensure that he got it. And sure enough, today we hear this news where he is deploying military assets to Greenland. So again, this is Trump in America acting like a general, fighting fights in a way that's calculated to get everything they want. And like, this is like a literal interpretation of everything I just said. Trump is literally sending the military to Greenland to show some force and basically say, we're going to get this the easy way or the hard way. So take a listen.
All right, we have some breaking news just coming in. The U.S. military is preparing to deploy aircraft to a key military base in Greenland. Well, important that this move comes amid escalating tensions over President Donald Trump's push to acquire the Arctic territory. In fact, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, the NORAD, has said that the aircraft will soon arrive at the Pituffik Space Base. And this is what we know for now. Right. Another deployment will support long-planned regional defense operations. And the statement did not describe the nature of this planned activity, which it said were aimed at defense cooperation. It said that the activities had been coordinated with Denmark and that Greenland had been informed. Additionally, NORAD has even said that the arriving aircraft will operate alongside those from bases in the continental United States and Canada. The statement even noted that NORAD routinely conducts sustained dispersed operations in the defense of North America. Now, while this may be a routine deployment, every move around Greenland is being watched carefully and with scrutiny. Trump has repeatedly threatened to take over Greenland one way or the other. Now, the U.S. president had earlier threatened to wield new tariffs against the countries which oppose his plans for the Arctic island. He has also threatened 10% levy on 8 European nations who send small military delegations there for an exercise. Now, Denmark has proposed that NATO start surveillance operations in Greenland to confront security concerns. Well, President Trump has also warned that he no longer feels obliged to think purely of peace, and that is after being snubbed for Nobel Prize. In a text message to Norwegian Prime Minister, Trump had said that he no longer has an obligation to pursue peace as he was ignored for the Nobel Peace Prize despite ending more than 8 wars that he has been talking about so long. This prize is awarded.
So did you hear what he said and like how that matches perfectly with, you know, the energy of what I said was going on in Capricorn and the predictions I made? He literally says, I no longer feel an obligation to think purely of peace. This is Trump in America acting like the general on the set, ready to do everything that they need to do, calculated art of war moves in order to win the conflicts that they're in. It's like, it's the story, you couldn't write a better story. And like I said, when you know the fundamentals of astrology, this kind of stuff is very easy to predict if you, 1, know the fundamentals, and 2, can get your hands on exact date and time for a specific chart. So, I don't know. We're in for the pretty hectic, conflict-heavy rest of the month until, I believe, February 23rd. Maybe we'll do some follow-ups on what to expect. I did some peeking at a little bit in the future. I think we're going to have a rough March and then things get easier in April. But that was only a real cursory look at the astrology of those months. So I'd have to dig a bit deeper, but would be very appreciated if you like, share, and subscribe. I feel like all the predictions that I've been making, even though they've been coming true, the algorithms that I've been using on these apps really aren't pushing this stuff out. You know, maybe they don't want this info out there. The world sells you tropical astrology when it's not very accurate. And I've been doing my best to try to show people that there is a way that you can make accurate predictions. And you could help me out on that front by liking and sharing and subscribing so that the algorithm finally picks this stuff up. Because I'd like to get to the point where I can teach people how to do this. I'm not trying to hog this info. I think the easiest way to get started is to dig into your own chart, learn about yourself. Nobody knows yourself better than yourself. And then you can kind of verify by cross-checking date predictions with what did actually happen in your life in the past, making predictions in the future, and then seeing that stuff like what you predict sort of starts to happen. So anyways, if you're interested or have questions about this astrology or other astrology, definitely drop it in the comments. It's a very powerful tool. I've had a lot of fun learning it, and I'd like to share it with people. So we have about 4 or 5 things more to talk about. I'll be pretty quick here. One thing that I wanted to bring up that was super interesting and good news in this crazy month, there has been
too many American families.
Some new research that shows a potential treatment for Alzheimer's, and by treatment I'm specifically mean a way to reverse the symptoms. So I'm no doctor, but Alzheimer's is basically plaque building up in your brain, and your brain not being able to sort of clean itself out, clean all that plaque out, and it starts to get inflamed, and so your brain basically starts to die. You stop creating new brain cells because plaque is getting in the way and you're not cleaning it out properly. And they finally found a way that seems like a very promising, non-invasive potential way to clear that stuff out. So take a listen. It has to do with NAD+, which is a very widely available supplement. I believe you go to like Whole Foods and get this right now. That's not to say you should. The researcher in the study mentions like they're returning NAD+ levels in Alzheimer patients back to what they normally were. And there's not much research on what would happen if you basically increase NAD+ in your brain above normal levels. Because the issue with Alzheimer's is that people that have Alzheimer's have a very, very suboptimal low level of NAD+, and all they're doing is returning those levels back to normal, because this is basically a compound that helps your body run its metabolic functions so that your brain has the ability to clear out all those plaques. So it helps with energy, it helps with metabolic functions, it helps with turning food to nutrients and things like that. And so when you lack it, again, your body just starts to break down because it can't heal itself, basically. So take a listen.
But what if there was a way to reverse the disease? More than 7 million Americans are living with Alzheimer's. This number is growing fast. In fact, by 2050, the Alzheimer's Association believes nearly 13 million will be diagnosed. And Alzheimer's not just about memory or motor loss. 1 in 3 older Americans die with Alzheimer's or a different type of dementia, killing more people every year than breast cancer and prostate cancer combined. Well, now a new study is giving hope to so many impacted by this terrible disease. Scientists studying mice found that restoring a central cellular energy molecule already in our brains reversed the markers of Alzheimer's, meaning the disease could possibly not be permanent. For more on this, we are joined by the senior author of this study, Dr. Andrew Pieper. Doctor, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about your work tonight. And tell us more about this, because your work focused around a molecule we already have in our brains and our bodies called NAD+. And as we age, NAD+ naturally goes down. You found that restoring this molecule can not just slow down decline, but actually reverse Alzheimer's disease in these mice.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Natasha, and thanks for having me on the show to talk about this. What we found is that as the disease progresses and when its onset and comes on, the NAD levels become critically low, and the brain is not able to repair itself the way that it normally can across a variety of different insults. And as a result, the disease starts to manifest. And what we did was we pharmacologically stabilized the NAD+ levels in the brain, not making them too high, but just getting them back down to normal or back up to normal. And then over the next several months, the brains of mice were able to fully repair themselves and completely recover all their normal cognitive function.
That's amazing. And we're looking at the stages of Alzheimer's right now. Could this work to reverse Alzheimer's disease on every stage? Does it depend how far gone the brain already is?
Well, we don't know that yet. What we did was tested a fairly advanced stage in mice, but mice are not people, and so it really needs to be tested in humans to figure out where it will be most applicable.
Yeah, what is next in this research? Is it human trials, and any indication on if this could work in human brains?
Well, we have some preliminary evidence that the molecule itself is neuroprotective in monkeys and safe in monkeys, and so that's been very encouraging. However, it's still not optimized for human use yet. It's really still just for laboratory animals. And so our next step is we've formed a company, Glengarry Brain Health, and we are optimizing the compound for human trials. And we hope to be in human trials within the next few years.
It's amazing. You know, many people already take NAD+, and we see sort of the Silicon Valley set and people interested in biohacking or slowing down aging. They've been on this bandwagon for a really long time now. And I think what's so notable about this, this is not a billion-dollar new pharmaceutical that'll take forever to approve and cost the earth. This is a supplement that is available right now on Amazon. So with the huge caveat of talk to your doctor first, at this point, would you recommend people add to cart and start on NAD+?
Well, that's a really important question. Thanks for asking that. I don't think that, I think everybody should consult their physician before they start taking NAD+ supplements over the counter. There's not a lot known about what happens, for example, if you have chronically elevated levels of NAD that are too high. And so what's unique about our pharmacological approach is our agent, it just stabilizes the levels. It brings them back up to normal. It doesn't boost them up too high ever. We give it to normal mice and it doesn't change their levels at all. But it's only when mice are stressed, if they've had an injury or if they have a genetic insult that's causing a disease and the NAD starts to fall, that we're able to then stabilize the function of a part of the cell called mitochondria, which then results in a stable NAD homeostasis.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Full reversal is crazy. It's a beautiful day. I know that a lot of people suffer from Alzheimer's. It's a very horrific disease. You basically watch people deteriorate and become shells of who they were right in front of your eyes. And it's not a fun time for anybody. And you have to wonder, since this is such like a common supplement, whether or not, I mean, no, this is just me saying for entertainment purposes only, whether or not this was a little bit suppressed or not. But who knows? Either way, it's very, very awesome to see that something as simple and widely available as NAD Plus can potentially bring people back fully to normal, a full reversal of Alzheimer's. It's a beautiful time to be alive, and I, for one, can't wait to see something like this widely available and suggested for everyone suffering from that disease. Now we're going to get into some of the fun stuff. It's about to hit a half an hour here, so I'll be pretty quick. There was an article that came out the other day where an analyst, a former analyst from the Bank of England, basically suggesting to her colleagues that they put together contingency plans in case the United States discloses aliens. She basically says that this would wreck the economy, and there is a very fast, urgent need to put together a plan in case this happens. Almost like she knows, maybe she knows something, but let's look at some of the details. Helen McCaw wrote to Andrew Bailey, the current governor of the Bank of England. She said, "The bank must plan for a financial crisis being triggered by an official announcement confirming the existence of alien life, one of its former policy experts has claimed." That's Helen McCaw. She served as senior analyst in financial security at the central bank, preparing for events that could impact the economy. And she's worried about the possibility that the White House may one day confirm we are not alone in the universe. More on that to come at the very end here. She believes something like this would send shockwaves through the markets and could trigger bank collapses and civil unrest. She worked at the bank for 10 years, and she insists that politicians and bankers can no longer afford to dismiss talks of alien life and snigger about little green men. She says the United States government appears to be partway through a multi-year process to declassify and disclose information on the existence of a technologically advanced non-human intelligence responsible for unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAPs. If the UAP proves to be of non-human origin, we may have to acknowledge the existence of a power or intelligence greater than any government and with potentially unknown intentions. It is entirely possible that government leadership and their central banks have not been properly briefed on the topic. UAP disclosure is likely to induce ontological shock and provoke psychological responses with material consequences. She added, there might be extreme price volatility in financial markets due to catastrophizing or euphoria, and a collapse in confidence if market participants feel uncertain on how to price assets using any of the familiar methods. There might be a rush to perceived safe assets such as physical gold, other precious metals, and some types of government bonds. Now, I'm going to put a pause on that because I just thought of this. Is there not a current rush for silver right now? Again, like almost like all these things are aligning. Like people might know something that we don't. And this sticks out even more because of the last piece of news that I have for you guys. Alternatively, precious metals might lose their status as perceived safe assets if people speculate that new spacefaring technologies will soon increase the supply of precious metals. There might be a rush to digital currencies such as Bitcoin, which may prove appealing if people question the legitimacy of government and lose trust in government-backed assets. If there is an official announcement and we get presented with very clear evidence that nobody is going to dispute, I would say that in a matter of hours you're going to have total financial instability. If banks start failing, the payment system will collapse and you'll have rioting on the streets because people can't fill their cars up with fuel or buy food in the supermarket. Again, almost like they know something is gonna happen. I guess we'll see. And with that being said, I hope you guys are doing your own due diligence to keep your thumb to the markets and make sure you have all your bases covered, because you don't want to be the last person dealing with this problem, that's for sure. So 3 more quick videos. These are the interesting tidbits about UAPs, UFOs, and aliens. Let's save the best stuff for last. So let's get into it. This is basically, I brought this up. This guy was on Jesse Michaels. He's a physicist, and he had some really good, like, more scientific heavy points about UFOs and UAPs. And I really appreciated his viewpoint because it was very grounded and based in, scientific theories, because he is a physicist. So he brought up ideas on why, if UFOs do travel across the universe and they have inhabitants, why these inhabitants might prefer water worlds over any other kind of planet, and why water worlds like the Earth stick out as particular safe havens. So take a listen.
But that's what they think. That's a cold day in hell, by the way, when you've got metal snow raining on the mountaintops. So that's what Venus's atmosphere is like, right? And then you go to Mars, and Mars has 1/100th the atmospheric pressure of Earth. So you need a spacesuit, and it's cold, 100 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit, something like that. Colder than Antarctica temperatures. So now comparing Venus to Mars, the temperature difference is a factor of 10,000 different. It's huge. And now you consider a water world. Water is only liquid from 0 degrees Celsius to 100 degrees Celsius, right? So you've got, as long as you have liquid water, you are in that temperature range. You're not going out of it. And so it's much more stable temperature-wise. The pressure varies with depth dramatically. I mean, atmospheric pressure varies with atmospheric height as well, but because water is so much more dense, it's much more dramatic. So you can control what pressure you like by controlling the depth. And water has such a high heat capacity, the temperature doesn't change that much. You don't have the temperature fluctuations of water temperature that you do in air temperature. So it's a much more stable environment. You're protected from solar radiation. You're protected from ultraviolet rays. You're protected from cosmic rays. You're protected from, small meteorites at least. It's a great place to hide. Electromagnetic waves don't travel far in water, so you can't see far. You can't detect things with electromagnetism very well, and which is why we use sonar, right? And so it's a great place to hide.
Yeah.
So there's every reason to go to the water.
It's fascinating. So if you were like a Kardashev 3 or 4 scale civilization, and you wanted to colonize a bunch of other planets, water is the perfect hideout spot. It's
Just
evidence.
go to water. Yeah, well, that's the other thing. So you only have a couple choices, right? So if you're going to go colonize another star system, you've got to carry everything you need to do it with you, right? So already the traveling is hard. It's going to be hard for anybody. But bringing everything you need to build up a base or some kind of settlement is going to be extra difficult. So you really have a few options, and water worlds we now know are relatively common. We have several water worlds in our solar system. Most of them are frozen moons, icy surfaces, but there's oceans underneath, right? So you can either plan to colonize. You can either just plan to stay in your spaceships, right? We're just going to live in our spaceships. That's probably the easiest thing to do, right? Or to colonize airless worlds like the moon, which is no different than staying in your spaceship. But then the other option is to live on a planet. And if you want to live on a planet to access its resources, you're either going to go with an airless world and stay in your spaceship, or the next most reasonable choice would be to go to water.
Yeah. And so it's also evidence, as you said, of this kind of Goldilocks temperature zone. I think water is specifically unique as well because the way that hydrogen and oxygen bond in an H2O molecule is a perfect crystal lattice structure. And so it's unique in that the solid form of it is actually less dense than the liquid form of it. Right. So you end up with, these worlds that don't flood because you end up with a lot of ice. And so, that's fascinating as well. And then I think that the final thing on the UFO front is you're talking about tons and tons of power. If you were to theoretically break hydrogen and oxygen bonds in H2O, you would get a ton of power.
Yeah, you can use water for storing energy that way.
Yeah, or for fuel.
And then seas have dissolved minerals in them. So you could, it's not a fast process, but you could extract any kind of mineral you want. Any atom you want, you can probably pull out of seawater. Whether you can do it fast enough to get a substantial amount is really the question. But that would be easier than mining, right?
Do you think there are UFO bases in our oceans? Tim Burchett recently said there are 5 oceanic hotspots across the world.
We have a higher propensity of sightings around these 5 or 6, I believe, deep water areas. And so to me, it just it creates a question there.
Do you think there are UFO bases?
I think that's probably the best bet.
Really?
Yeah.
We'll leave it there. If you guys didn't know, UFOs coming out of water, going into water, seems like the very popular theory going on right now. A lot of UFOs are seen, like I said, going in and out of water, around water, Catalina Island, things like that. And so a lot of, like you said, Tim Burchett himself are speculating that there's bases in UFOs underwater. I even heard somebody say that there is an entryway. I forget who exactly said this, but he said there was an entryway to a underwater base inside of a mountain where UFOs go underwater, go into this entryway into the mountain, and their base is inside that mountain. So expect news on this stuff to pick up as the year goes on. I personally think if we're hearing about it, then they probably already know the answer to what they're talking about. So I guess we'll see what they say. I got 2 more quick things. This is the guy, James Fox, who is investigating the Varginha, Brazil incident where a bunch of normal people basically have independent accounts of seeing a UFO crash, and then nearby, I believe that same day or later on in the day, other individuals saw what they believed to be an extraterrestrial, and then this extraterrestrial was picked up and taken by the military and supposedly then scooped up by U.S. military and flown out of Brazil. A lot of crazy information surrounding this story. Supposedly one of the guys who actually picked the alien up and put him, or so-called alien, picked him up, put him in the car, got scratched, and he died from some crazy anomalous infection. And they have a lot of interviews and statements from reputable people like a neurosurgeon and things like that. So this guy basically, he's about to say, I'll just play it actually.
I see this individual from the DIA that I've always wanted to talk to. And I'd met with this individual before, but very guarded. And I saw that this individual had a...
What does DIA stand for again?
Defense Intelligence Agency.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. And might have been DOD as well. But anyway, I saw that this individual had a cocktail, and it looked like a whiskey on the rocks. And so I ordered a whiskey neat, and we start chopping it up. Excuse me. And I said, you know, I've heard that there are not that many people on this planet that have the big picture or the bigger picture. Because I'm dying to know. I'm just curious. Even if I can't share it with the world, I still want to know.
Yeah.
And this individual's like, yeah, probably 10 people that have the bigger picture. I was like, 10 people on the fucking planet? Really? And I said, well...
This person would know?
As far as I'm concerned, yes.
Okay.
And, I mean, I was all ears. So I said, well, like, what category would you consider yourself? Probably one of 30. So you have a bigger picture. I mean, not quite as big as the 10, but you would call yourself in the category of one of 30. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I was like, well, what would you think of like someone like Hal Puthoff? Probably one of 50, I would say. Yeah, probably one of 50. I was like, Well, I heard that, I don't know. I've kind of heard that the bigger picture is a little scary. This individual's like, yeah, I could see that. So I was like, shit, am I going to find out? Like what, you know? And I was like, well, scary, like I have something to worry about, like a fearful. No. You'll be fine. We'll be fine. So I was like, well, and it was like a crowbar trying to, you know what I mean? But I wanted to be tactful. I didn't want to just be like, you know. So the conversation a little more and pry a little further. I said, well, like how is it scary? This individual goes, intent. Their intent. And I was like, oh, their intent. Like, what the hell is their intent? They know what their intent is? Like origins and intent? That's the gold. I mean, that's the holy grail as far as I'm concerned. I don't know. So I said, and then just as I was going to pry a little further, thinking like, and I could see Leslie. That's all the information he got out of the guy. Some guy comes over and interrupts him. We're getting close to time, so I figured I'd just cut it short. But yeah, I don't know if you guys have any ideas on, you know, what the purported intent of these aliens are. Let me know. I know there's a lot of different theories floating around. Like Bob Lazar says that aliens view us as containers for souls or something along those lines. So if you have any other ideas or have heard something else, definitely let me know. Drop it in the comment. This is the last one, and this is why I said, one, that I think we're going to have a crazy day tomorrow, and two, that I heard this today, so this was like a last-minute ad, and the news about the Bank of England stuff came out a few days ago, but putting these two together, realizing that article came out and then we have this happening tomorrow, makes me think that maybe she meant very, very urgent, as in like the next couple of days. But listen to this like 1 minute clip.
And welcome to a special edition of Reality Check. This is a preview for what I think is going to be probably one of the most momentous UAP-related events in Washington, D.C. in the past 25 years. My friend and colleague James Fox, filmmaker of the phenomenon Moment of Contact, is joining us now. He's hosting what will be, I think, an absolutely groundbreaking press conference in Washington, D.C. on Tuesday the 20th, coming up next week at 11 a.m. at the National Press Club, where several of the key first-hand witnesses to what was indubitably a crash and a retrieval of non-human alien people at a location in Varginha, Brazil, happened. This is momentous, James, the fact that you've finally been able to get these witnesses here. Welcome to Reality Check. Tell us what's happening next Tuesday.
Okay, so this is happening tomorrow. And like I said, like, it makes me think about that Bank of England article, because maybe this is the moment where we potentially get on record at the United States government actually acknowledging for real that there was some kind of incident related to an intelligence or a being that is either not from the earth or is very intelligent and has been thus far unacknowledged. You know, maybe they live underwater, underground, something like that, but who knows? Either way, James Fox is bringing the eyewitnesses who had firsthand experiences with this craft and with this being to Washington, D.C., to get them in front of the United States government and give their opinions. So there's going to be a press conference. I'm sure it'll be filmed and distributed everywhere. But if it's not, I'll definitely be recording it and giving the good bits to you, either here or on my TikTok. So follow me there, like this video. Like I said, I think it's going to be a crazy day tomorrow, crazy week. Who knows? Also, again, the astrology predictions that I keep making, they keep coming true, but the algorithm's not pushing them out. So if you could do me a favor, like, follow, subscribe, maybe drop a comment if you have questions about that. Upcoming prediction, I think we're going to get news about Trump getting his hands on Greenland in an ownership way, probably sooner than we think. I know he's putting military there, but I don't think he's going to have to. And actually NATO is responding, saying, you know, that they'll meet him with force. I don't think that's actually going to happen. I think he's going to get what he wants relatively cleanly without bloodshed, but I guess we'll see. Yeah, this was a long one. This was a fun one. Lots of crazy information. I think next week is going to be even crazier. So do me a favor, subscribe, and I will see you guys at the next one. Hopefully you have a great week. If something crazy happens tomorrow, actually, I might just drop another video, really depending on what kind of information is dropped in that press conference. I feel like I get excited every time one of these press conferences happens, and then nothing really results from it. But this one has to do with, like, literally, like, biological entities. So hopefully something crazy. If we can kind of get confirmation that this did happen, that it was a non-human intelligence that was picked up, you know, having American politicians acknowledge that this happened, kind of getting it on record. I really think it could be like the moment that you can no longer ignore or not acknowledge that there exists some kind of other intelligence on this planet, or, you know, whether or not they're visiting or they exist. I guess that's neither here nor there. I guess we'll see. Anyways, see you guys at roundup number 4 in